Hello, everybody. We're back. Episode 27, presented by SodaStick.com. Not a lot. Last week we went heavy. We gave you guys a lot. I hope you really enjoyed that. We have a lot of really good stuff coming up. Joining us, Executive Director of Minnesota Hockey, Glen Andresen. Such an awesome guy. Just to talk a little bit about the grassroots stuff. We're trying to really give you guys a little bit of everything here. In case you haven't figured that out, that's what the Beauties are all about. Right, Alexis?
Well, you and I, between every job we have, I think we cover every level in some way, shape, or form. From youth up to pros. We got it all. So you're going to have to listen to it all. And if you don't want to, then pick a different podcast.
Yeah. And I love it all. I think it's, again, it's all hockey, and it starts somewhere, and it starts at the grassroots. So that's what we're going to talk with Glen about, and kind of how Minnesota is unique. We talked a little bit about it before, but really want to hammer that home. You guys, we special. We are the state of hockey for a reason, and we are special. It's a great tune. In regards to the NHL, I guess not a whole lot has changed as predicted. I am curious to see the NBA guys has laid out quite the red carpet for their little bubbles. Which my personal favorite is that you can call in and report any violations of NBA stuff. And it all seems so insane. And I think the bigger question is, if the NBA moves forward with it, is the NHL going to feel well, shit, now we got to do all of this too?
I literally had this conversation with someone 2 days ago. They were like, you think if the NBA goes through, the NHL is going to have to, right? I was like, probably. Yeah. It's going to be one or both or none. And so I know, I keep joking around. I'm like, if I had $1 for every time somebody asks me, what is the NHL doing right about now? I have to answer that question 50 times a day.
Right.
One of my jobs is waitressing, for those who don't know. And I work at a golf course. And so people, during all this COVID stuff, as we've been reopened, people keep asking me oh, so what have you been doing during COVID? What's your regular job, all of that. And so every time I tell someone I'm in sports, they're like, oh, what do you do? And then it leads to what's the NHL going to do? What's everyone else going to do? And I have had
suddenly you're their favorite waitress. No, come back here. We don't need actually anything. We just want to talk sports.
We just want to know what the NHL is doing. Yeah, that's been my life for the past 2 weeks. And I just had the conversation with someone the other day where they're like, if the NBA goes through, I bet the NHL is going to go through. And I was like, probably. I mean, they've kind of been two sides of the same coin here for this entire COVID journey. And
they're both contact sports, so it's not like you could argue, baseball obviously has their, baseball. Sorry, baseball fans. We're not going to go there. Yikes.
They're a whole mess over there. They're a whole mess.
The one sport that should be able to survive this is having the most drama about it all. It's
literally,
my God.
My favorite tweets have been everyone just roasting the MLB for having no clue what they're doing. They're like, you guys don't even have to touch each other, and you don't even know what you're everyone is confused over there.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I don't have to answer those questions, because I don't know what the MLB is doing.
You guys complain about commissioners, Bettman and Goodell, and Manfred's hold my beer here. I will show you what a terrible, because no offense, he's not doing it the right way. It's insane.
It's a lot. Yeah.
So I feel for you guys. There was some college hockey news though, in case you guys missed it. Don Lucia. Yes, you heard that correctly. Don Lucia, formerly of the University of Minnesota Golden Gophers, even prior to that, Colorado College, Alaska, I believe too, is now the CCHA commissioner. And you also heard me correct, because remember, the CCHA back in, guys. It's a thing. So he was named the CCHA commissioner last week. One of the questions that was posed to him was, will St. Thomas be a fit for the CCHA? Because remember, they are removing Division II programs, and instead you'll have Division III or Division I, and St. Thomas is hoping to make that move to Division I. Will that happen? It hasn't been seen yet. They won't be able to apply for that until April of 2021. But that would be
we'll give you guys
cool.
a follow-up in over a year.
Probably. I mean, if sports are still a thing in a year in general.
Yeah.
We could let you know.
Episode 271. We're like, by the way, if you remember from 150 episodes ago, St. Thomas is now Division I. So There's your update.
They'll be and that's truly world changing. I mean, I tell you, What in the hell? That's amazing.
That's gonna be the only thing we talk about on that episode too. It's just gonna be a quick update on St. Thomas, and then we're done. No guests, no nothing.
Nothing. I like it. I'm in. Mark that. Mark our words. That's what's happening in a year when St. Thomas joins. But that's exciting. So I guess, good for Lucia. I know everyone has their own opinions on him and what he had done with the Gophers here. Won't get into that. But
we said we were going to keep the episode short, Jessi. Let's not open that
exactly.
can of
So that's exciting news. It's nice to see a familiar face again. A good reminder that college hockey continues to grow with the CCHA kind of getting their bearings amongst themselves. And again, potentially another Minnesota program going D1 here in the state, which we still will talk about with Glen too, because again, all comes back around, guys.
Full circle.
How great Minnesota is in hockey. But I also, the other kind of our closing segment, it's a very close race for the Calder between Alexis and I.
Is it though?
I
think I'm pulling
ahead.
Makar's
pulling ahead. I don't, it's so funny.
No, it is close though.
I don't disagree with anybody who thinks that even you, like we had talked about on that episode, like I could flip a coin. I think,
and people were tweeting at us their opinions, and like everyone made sense. I'm like, I understand all of this. Like, I agree with the Quinn Hughes arguments. I agree with the Mikhail Makar arguments. Like, everyone is right.
I will tease because I like to win and I like to be right, but at the same time, I'm like, sure. If you don't agree with me, I get that. Like, there's 100 different ways to go. So now I want to pose this question to you. So I had tweeted out earlier last week about a dream pickup game, which had Mario Lemieux, Gretzky, I forget who else it was, all in there. A gorgeous picture. Oh, I think, you had Yager, Pavel Bure. So basically every phenomenal NHL player that you could think of was a part of Paul Kariya. So who would be on your dream pickup game? Not include, you can't have a Gretzky, but like of current players. So you could pick like 5. And it doesn't even have to be position-wise, because we're just talking, let's get out on the pond, let's play a little
shinny. And they're on my team, or I'm playing against them? Because I get buried alive playing against any of those people. Okay.
They'd be on your team.
I want John Tortorella behind the bench, and I want Marcus Foligno, and I don't want anyone else, just me and him, and then Tort's coaching us.
So just like skating around. That's what you want to do. Just skate around with Foligno.
Run circles around each other.
I'm nervous for the day when we actually have Marcus on the podcast.
I don't want to be on
here, and I'm going to be like, this is Alexis.
I am not the one who has a fan club. I swear.
We're professional women in sports. I swear to God.
I swear. I'm not tweeting about you from the press box. I swear. That's such a tough question, because there's so many different people who I would want to play with for different reasons, like truly, like Marcus Foligno would be so fun to play with, because I know he would be like a great personality to play with, like on the ice. But then there's like, like it would be super fun to play with like Connor McDavid. Like, who wouldn't want to like lace up and play with him? Like, those guys would be really fun. Oh gosh, who else would I want to play with? Brad Marchand. I hate him, but it would be kind of fun to play with him, play with him, and like antagonize people together. That would be kind of a cool time. I want to skate race Connor McDavid, so I'm gonna say like I want him on my team.
I want to watch a skate race with you and Connor. But you have, so for those who don't know, Alexis has skills. Like, she can. I can skate. For instance, I wouldn't be able to like I can skate a little bit, but I'm not good.
Connor McDavid, like, let's not blow this up out of proportion. Like, Connor McDavid would like reach the other end of the ice, and I would be taking like stride 1. Like, it wouldn't even be close, but like I can skate. He'd just be waiting down there for me for like 20 seconds. Yeah.
No, for sure. I would agree. I don't think I would pick anybody unusual, like Connor McDavid for sure, just because he's phenomenal. Like, how could you not want to play a pickup game with him just to watch, if anything? And obviously Alex Ovechkin too, because he is my number one. I've been his biggest fan since he came on the scene.
Let me set him up for a one-timer, then I can die. I can die happy.
Yes. Yeah.
That would be pretty dope.
Yeah, I don't know. I've been trying to chew on this, but again, I feel like we've already put out there so often the players that we love,
that we really like.
I'm trying to think of who would be a different twist, though.
Someone
like,
unique.
Who could I tossed in? Yeah. Maybe Getzlaf?
I don't even, who even plays in the NHL anymore? No, you can't pick Getzlaf. What is this? No, Jessi, retract that statement. You can't. No, I won't stand by that as your co-host.
Yeah, I don't. Let's see. Throw a wrench in there and just see what happens. Throw a little bomb, close the door, find out. or Mitch Marner. I've talked about.
Mitch Marner
really appreciate his style.
Let me play with Austin Matthews. You know what? I changed my mind. I want Austin Matthews. Okay,
I'm surprised you hadn't mentioned Austin yet. I was like waiting for it. I'm like, I know who Alexis is gonna pick. It's gonna be Austin Marquez Torrens.
We need like a counter where it like keeps track of how long I go without talking about Marcus Foligno or Austin Matthews or John Tortorella.
Yeah.
No, but Mitch Marner would be fun. Like, or like Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews, and then I'm just like the third person on the line and just watch them like just like put on a show, and I'm just like, hey, I'm over here.
Exactly.
They play so well together.
And because I love USA Hockey, I would pick all Americans too, probably.
Oh, obviously.
Like minus Mitch. I mean, move Mitch, whatever. I'd pick all American. You could have a Canadian team and I'll have an American team, and that's how we set this up.
There we go. USA versus Canada. It'll be like our own little World Cup.
I'll take Nick Foligno too.
Oh,
yeah, he's an American.
The brothers against each other?
Yep.
Wow.
So that'd be fun.
That's savage. That is savage.
I know. Let's make it happen, boys. all of you NHLers out there.
Send out emails.
Listening.
Dear Austin Matthews, are you free next Saturday? We're trying to do a pickup game.
Yep. Charlie Coyle, I know you listen, so come on over. You're on my team too. You're American. Bring it on. Let's go. No, I think it'd be fun. So who would be on your dream pickup game? Again, doesn't have to be anybody crazy, but maybe you are a big fan of a number 17 or something like that on a team that you would like to have just because you enjoy their company. Let us know. Tweet us, email us, send a carrier pigeon, I guess, if that's a thing still. Why not?
Sure.
Because all of that rolls into you need to subscribe to our podcast, follow us on all social media channels. We love to hear from you guys. We love interacting. We want to know that you're listening, digging us. Give us those 5 stars. Maybe 4.5, I guess, if you disagree.
Take half a star off for my presence. I understand.
Before we take a quick break, we want to give a shout out to our presenting sponsors, sodastick.com, who just restocked some of their awesome McGolden Light fishing. What else are you doing in the summer besides fishing? Oh, I know, you're golfing, which guess what? Soda Stick's got you covered there. They just released a really cool golf polo. They've got ball markers, they've got little hats, everything that you could need to hit a hole in one. I went golfing just the other week. Didn't even need a ball marker. You know why? Because I was not on the fairway at all. But if I were, I would use Soda Stick's ball markers. So again, shout out to them. We love them. They're the best. Go check them out. Slap down that Bardown Beauties at checkout for free shipping on any purchase. We'll be right back. We're back. Joining us now, Glen Andresen, Executive Director of arguably the greatest USA Hockey affiliate in the country, Minnesota Hockey, formerly with the Minnesota Wild, a proud Duluthian, and raising 4 what I'm assuming will be 4 future UMD Bulldogs. Is that right?
That's the plan. Plan. Talking to the coaches up there now. Yeah. We're 15 years away.
You got to be careful of those recruiting restrictions, though, right? You're very well aware of age. And
Exactly. We're just sending notes right now.
Yeah.
Notes and crayons. So.
Well, Glen, thanks so much for joining us. I mean, how are you doing through all of this? Obviously, just as crazy when everything came to a halt for Minnesota hockey on the grassroots and youth side as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly been a difficult time and a challenge, but it's been tough for everybody, and so we're fortunate to be doing what we're doing, and want to recognize how many people out there have been affected by all this. So when you kind of look at the way youth hockey's been affected, you kind of step back and realize we're pretty fortunate. We've got a lot of work to do, and we've been doing a lot, but so not to say it's been easy, but we're, I feel like we're in a pretty good spot right now, considering where things were 2 and 3 months ago. So,
well, for those people who don't know exactly what you do for your job, explain to our listeners kind of what your job entails. And, as Jessi said, obviously more dealing with some of the grassroots level stuff as well. So what do you do for your job on a day-to-day basis? Obviously now it's a little bit different, but when life is normal, what does your job look like?
It's been very different the last 3 months, but I'll try to make this as concise as possible, because sometimes it can be difficult to explain everything that Minnesota Hockey is. But as executive director of Minnesota Hockey, I oversee really kind of the business side of Minnesota Hockey, and even people who are Minnesota Hockey members may not fully understand what Minnesota Hockey is, but we're the governing body of community-based youth hockey in the state of Minnesota. To put it put it succinctly. There's other pieces. There's adult hockey. There's disabled hockey. There's women's hockey. There's a lot of other pieces, rec hockey. But when people think of Minnesota hockey, or the biggest part of Minnesota hockey are these community youth associations that make up our membership. So from the time you're 4 or 5 years old and putting on a jersey representing your community all the way up until you're 14, 15 years old, you're part of Minnesota hockey. And then you play high school hockey, you kind of go outside of Minnesota hockey, yet you're still a lot of times wearing that same jersey you were wearing when you were a little kid. And so that's in a nutshell. And then, we have, when I say you're outside of Minnesota hockey once you're in high school, not completely true, because you might play in our fall league, you might play in our spring high performance programs or things like that. So there's a lot that makes it up. And then, my job is really to oversee a lot of things, whether it's the marketing, the communications, the finances, the corporate sponsorships, the events that we put on. Those are all kind of pieces of the job. But really, I feel like my biggest role is explaining and sharing what makes our model in Minnesota so unique and so important, and really trying to preserve it and enhance it any way we can.
And you said it right there. That was going to be my next question. Explain, because I think in Minnesota, we take that for granted, right? It's what we've always known. It's like, well, sure, you play for, Matamita Youth Association. I'll just throw out some random association.
Just random, super random.
And, you want to go play for your high school. It's never the kids. That's what they see growing up. And again, I think it's what we've always known, but explain how special and unique that really is and how rare it is across the U.S.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in hockey, in Duluth, playing hockey in Duluth, and have been involved in hockey my whole life. I worked for the Wild coming out of college, and until I had this job, I really had no idea that we were any different than anywhere else. And so a lot of people may not realize how unique we are, but here, basically, to sum it up, you play where you live or where you go to school. And that's not the case in most other places. Wisconsin and North Dakota have similar models, but really, you don't have a lot of choices here in Minnesota, and that might sound bad, but when you compare it to kind of what other models are like, you realize how great it is, because in those other areas of the country, it's, well, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to play for this coach, or that team's better, I want to be over there. And while that might be good in the heads of the parents, it's not necessarily good for the market. Thinned out pyramid, whereas in Minnesota we like to say we keep that pyramid wider for as long as possible, because kids aren't weeded out. They aren't put on these all-star teams at 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. They are really just part of these community teams, playing with their friends that they go to school with. And they also are not traveling all over the country to play. They're playing right within their communities. And they, so really by doing that, the access into hockey is a lot easier. And that means more kids are playing. And the more kids that play, the better the game is.
And it keeps it more affordable too, right? I mean, hockey still, everyone thinks of, it's this expensive sport, but Minnesota is so comparable again across the nation, because you get to stay home and because you have the community rinks that invest into the programs, right?
Right. And no one, I'm not going to patronize anyone and say it's not expensive to play hockey, because even in Minnesota it is. But if you compare it, A, to some other sports, it's really comparable, and B, compared to the rest of the country, it might make your eyes pop out, especially as you get older. These some of these club teams or academies, things like that, kids are paying up around $8,000, $10,000, $20,000 a year. Kids aren't, parents are, and so, to me, I kind of always use the dance analogy, and my daughters are in dance. I'm not disparaging dance. I'll be honest and say I didn't want to put my daughters into dance, and the reason for that being is because I heard all the nightmare stories from other dance parents who said, well, it's this much money for uniforms, and it's you have to go to those recitals, and even if your daughter goes right away, you have to stay for the whole thing. And so all these stories I hear, I was like, well, I don't want my daughter to do dance.
Did you watch Dance Moms and were like, nope, not
no, I didn't.
this?
I didn't, because that would even further scare me. But I make the same comparison to hockey. If someone in the cubicle next to me is talking about how well it's $15,000 a year, and well, we can't do this family thing this weekend because we're flying to Detroit for a youth hockey tournament, and then the next weekend we're going to Winnipeg, and the next weekend we're going down to Dallas, or whatever it might be. If I'm a parent with young kids, I'm thinking that sport's probably not for me. I'll look at something else. So that's a long way of me saying that I think we have it good here, in that it's relatively inexpensive. You never have to travel far. All our coaches and volunteers do this really just for the love of the game and for the love of kids, and that's so unique. You might not realize that youth coaches in other areas make a lot more money, and that's great for them, but not so great for the people that need to pay that.
Well, you talked about a little bit ago about how, not everybody realizes how special we are in Minnesota to kind of have the programs that we have starting from a young age, and how you play for your city or your school, and that's who you're with until you move on to the bigger steps as you get older. And I talked about this in a previous episode, but I had no idea when I was younger that other states didn't do it like this. Like, it took me, I didn't realize until college, and I became friends with guys and girls on the hockey teams who came from other states who were like, yeah, I moved away when I was 14. I went here, I went there. I'm like, you guys don't just play in your city growing up until you go to college. Like, I didn't realize how special we were. And so talk a little bit about, kind of as everything shut down with COVID here, talk about kind of your role at your level with that, and kind of how that affects Minnesota. And do you think it affects us more because we have such a tight-knit hockey community? Or do you think we'll be able to bounce back better than some places because of it?
Well, my hope is that we're able to bounce back, and I don't know what the future holds, but I would say, in my mind, I think we're really well positioned to handle this well, because and there's been a lot of national talk about maybe this is the time to reshape youth sports and get it more community oriented, less travel, more in-house leagues, things like that. And when you hear kind of these national voices saying that, like Tom Ferry with the Aspen Institute, we can kind of look at it and say, well, we have that kind of going already.
Yeah.
So that's not to say there's not going to be challenges. I think our biggest challenge is going to be getting new players into the game, which is always our focus. People just are probably not going to have as much money to spend. So many people have been affected financially. And we hope that doesn't filter down to youth sports, but it might. So we have to anticipate that. But like I said, I think we're pretty well positioned to come out of this. We've been using these last 3 months, to work with the state of Minnesota and the Minnesota Department of Health to get kids back, not just on the ice, but on the fields and the courts and everything else. And now we're kind of, with our fingers crossed, planning on pulling off a normal season, or as normal as possible. And so we're in a good spot too with the timing. It's still only June 16th. Or sorry, what is it? The 19th, 18th?
18th today.
Yeah.
June
Okay.
something. Yep. Go with that.
Yeah, and timestamps on this podcast are very important, because we have a running record of saying something and then have it being completely discredited, shortly after we record, but before we release. So yeah, timestamp.
Mason Zucker will not be traded the next day. Oh, he's got, all right, he's out.
Yeah.
See ya, never mind.
Good point. Well, yeah, forgive me because I can't remember the days. I can't remember what I ate to say for breakfast, but we it's mid-June, and if you had said on May 1st that hockey would be on the ice in some way by June 1st, I would have said there's no way. So the fact that we're 2 weeks in, or a little over 2 weeks into being able to skate, that's a good thing. And, you know, as long as things progress and everyone does their best, I think, you know, hopefully we can keep progressing towards more and more hockey, not just practice scenarios and things like that.
I mean, one kind of the tougher challenges you guys had to face head on immediately amongst the COVID was the state tournaments, right? The season had dwindled down, and then that's the coveted thing. I mean, explain to folks how special the youth state tournaments are. I think when I started working closely with Minnesota hockey, it was amazing to see. You look at the Pee Wee teams, excuse me, and the Bantam teams that are participating in the Minnesota hockey state tournaments, and then you look a couple years down the road, and sure enough, those are the same kids that are in the coveted high school tournament. So talk about the correlation there, and then how you guys handled dealing with, you know, canceling the tournaments and what you guys did in exchange to still celebrate those teams that had made this postseason action.
Yeah, well, that undoubtedly that was the hardest part in all this. This really came down, you know, COVID at its peak, or, you know, this happened, you know, our state tournaments for that same weekend when the NHL shut down and the NBA shut down, and really all these dominoes were falling, and eventually the decision was made to cancel our state tournament. So it was awful because of what you mentioned, how special it is for all these kids. And it's, you know, not just the AA tournaments, but the B tournaments and, you know, junior gold, you know, especially the junior gold kids, a lot of whom are seniors, and the 19U girls who, you know, their hockey careers, organized hockey careers, are done at this point. So so that was really difficult and really sad, and certainly understood all the frustration. So while we can't make up for it in games, we did want to do everything we could to honor those teams. So we did some social media campaigns. We had teams submit kind of their stories from the season and share those, posted team photos online, and we're also in the process of getting some banners made for each individual that was on those state tournament teams, and sending those out later this summer. So kind of pales in comparison to how special those tournaments are, and you know, capping off the season with maybe a road trip or staying in a hotel, or just fighting for a championship trophy. So so it's tough, and I really hope that we never have to deal with that again.
And you've had some NHLers go through there. I think it's so funny when I talk to some of those guys who they still vividly remember that youth tournament, even more so than the high school. And it's just, it's a credit to you guys, how special you really make those kids feel. I mean, it's amazing. You guys really roll out the red carpet. What are some of the events that you guys do to make sure that the kids leave with those lasting memories, even if that's as far as they ever get in their hockey careers?
Yeah, well, we really do sell. What we've learned is, you know, through surveys years ago, is that the things that resonate most with people are those postseason tournaments, the region and the state tournaments, and so we do everything we can to work with the host sites to make those special. So it's the banquets, and it's just the little things that, you know, the kind of the gift packages that kids get when they show up, and you know, there's PA announcements, and they bring, you know, a lot of host sites to put spotlights on the kids for introductions and things like that. It just makes these kids feel like this is a big deal. And you know, we are doing it at ages too, where that stuff is pretty cool for kids when they're 11, 12, 13, 14. And so it is just a special time. And I meant to touch on that in your initial question, Jessi, it is pretty fun to look back at past state tournament programs, and seeing some of the names that are playing college hockey, or in the NHL or the NWHL. They played in our state tournaments, and there's a whole lot of names that didn't go into the NHL, but that's what's cool about Minnesota, is those kids that didn't go on to great things in the career were still teammates of, you know, the Casey Middlestats and the Sammy Walkers and all those players. So, and I'd be willing to bet most of them are still close friends with all of them too.
What do you think are the next steps here moving forward to as rinks start to open up and players can start skating and all of that starts to unfold here in the next few months? What do you think? I know obviously we can't predict the future. We don't know what kind of roadblocks we're going to hit here as things start to start to reopen, excuse me. But what do you think the near future looks like, or what are your hopes at least?
Yeah, well, we've had ongoing discussions, including yesterday with Commissioner Terrett Holmes from the state of Minnesota. He's works closely with Governor Walz, and those conversations have been great. He's been outstanding in all this. I don't envy his position and kind of having to work with not just hockey, and not just team sports, but individual sports, and just all these activities. There's so many, and we all know how passionate parents are about their kids doing these things. So he's dealing with all this, and he's been great with us. And so what we're trying to share with him is how we are trying to make our game as safe as possible, and follow all these guidelines to ensure that we mitigate risk as much as we can. And so the hope is that later, end of June, early July, somewhere in there, we can take another step towards more normal hockey. So scrimmages, potentially games, things like that. So that's our hope, is that in July we're start to able to maybe have a few more players on the ice, be able to do some game situations or games, and just keep doing things the right way, so that when we get to August, September, associations can start planning, or they're already planning, but associations can start doing the things they would do in a normal year, and getting kids out on the ice.
And to reiterate for those that aren't aware, currently right now, the rules are parents kind of essentially have to drop their kids off unless they're 10 and under, correct? Then one parent can be there to help with equipment, but otherwise it is very limited, normalcy, as we say, right? You can't go in the locker rooms. Kids have to be ready and dressed, and it's no contact with pods of 10 or less, right?
Yeah, must be 10 or less. So right now you can have two groups of 10 on the ice, but they have to be at separate ends, and not mixing. Some arenas are allowing use of locker rooms. So it's kind of up to the arena, but yes, we do recommend all players show up and leave fully geared up. So those are a few things. You mentioned the parents not being in the rinks. We might institute that permanently and just never allow parents. And I'm just kidding.
I mean, I'm going to be that parent that just drops my kids, because that's like an hour of mom time,
That's
think.
what I
I'm
said.
going to go do errands.
Yeah, when we first talked about that, I was like, I hope that's still a rule when I'm a mom, because I'm just going to drop them off. I'll see you in a couple hours. Have a good time.
Yeah.
Well, and the ride home from games would be a lot easier too. No one's nitpicking the kids' performance. But no, I do think, or I do hope that soon we'll get back to where parents and fans are allowed into the rinks. They might be socially distanced, and that's one good thing about an arena is, usually for youth hockey you can spread out pretty well, but we'll get there when we get there. And right now we're really kind of focused on making sure this phase one goes well, and that teams are doing things the right way, associations are doing things the right way, because we don't, we say this all the time, but we just don't want to go backwards. We don't want to be responsible for things going sideways and having to stop hockey again, or get into the season and having to shut it down. So if we're doing as many of the right things as possible, we lessen the chance for that.
And obviously you can find all those guidelines on minnesotahockey.org for any questions and things that we have there. We talked about the pods too being allowed. The USA Hockey's American Development Model, which has been around for a decade or so, should almost already kind of lean itself toward teams being able to work in smaller groups, right? I mean, to a point, I think that should help hockey, if anything, that they're already accustomed to breaking off and doing the small group activities like the ADM had suggested.
Yeah, and a lot of those are really skill based, and I think at this time especially with kids not being on the ice for a few months. Skills are really probably what they need work on the most. So, and in fact, Mike Terwilliger on our staff is the high school coach at Bloomington Jefferson, and they're just getting back on the ice. And, he said that there is a lot of rust right now. So it's probably good that they're not doing a lot of games. They can work on the things like skating and stick handling and shooting and just those fundamental things that might take a little while to come back. So, yeah, station-based practices, just skill work is really important at this point. So it might be a little bit of a blessing in disguise, I guess, where kids are forced to just work on the fundamentals and not so much the game scenarios where they don't touch the puck as much.
It's kind of like when we would forget our cleats for soccer practice and they said, oh, that's okay. You got your tennis shoes. We'll just run 5 miles today instead. So sometimes you got to get back to the basics to keep things moving.
Exactly.
Well, awesome. Before we let you go, Glenn, and because I have always asked every player that I've ever interviewed this question, and I'm curious to see what you might say. Obviously, you're a little bit more biased, but in 10 words or less, describe what makes Minnesota hockey special. You can use your fingers to count. I will keep track for you.
I would say, okay, playing with friends for your community works is fun.
Nice. Yeah.
Nailed
it's
it.
a little jumbled of a sentence, but I like it.
Yeah, we understood.
It's not a complete sentence.
Put that on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
But that is the message we try to deliver. And that's one point I want to make is that, we always say, oh, it's great playing for your community and playing with your friends, and that's so fun and romantic and nostalgic. But the key part is that also works. And so you don't need to go off and do this or that because it costs more money, so therefore it might be better. The numbers just kind of prove out that just playing and playing as long as you can and with as many friends as you can is what keeps you in it. And I bet every NHLer, if you've asked them what their advice is to kids, is to just have fun. Mm-hmm. And there's no better way to have fun than playing with your best friends. So that's I'll end my I'll get off my soapbox.
Hey, but you've got fans, and I agree. I've said it over and over again. The proof is in the pudding. You look at how many Minnesotans have made it to the NHL, how many Minnesotans are Division I, how many Minnesotans in the NWHL, on the Olympic teams, at these different, international competitions. And it's just by following this model and again, playing with your friends and enjoying playing, it's going to keep the kids in the sport. If the kids are having fun, they're going to want to keep playing and they want to keep with their friends. And it's romantic to see. And you mix in the outdoor hockey, which is a whole nother segment that we could get into. Obviously the importance of being able to be creative and be outside with your friends for free. It's definitely good. But Glenn, thank you again so much for joining us and talking a little youth hockey. We're excited to get back into action just as you are. And, appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. And we're back. Thanks again to Mr. Andreessen for joining us and talking a little youth hockey. It's exciting to see that rinks are starting to open up. Like everybody, there's a little hesitance. Obviously, hockey is a very contact sport, so different things in line there. But I know some people have been sneaking around at rinks anyway, so now it's you guys can do it. You're allowed.
We're on to you.
We're on to you. We know. But no, Glenn's awesome, and again, he's such a believer in the model. He's a product of the community-based model, so. It's really good. Again, proof is in the pudding. Can't deny that Minnesota doesn't produce some very elite talent at every age level, at every group. So very exciting to see. So thanks to him for coming on. We'll have him join us during the course of the season too, to see what other things Minnesota hockey's got shaken. And if you hadn't noticed, Fred is now in the house as well. What's up, Fred?
Producer Fred.
Hi.
He was working his big boy job and daddy job. So
Daddy
shout out to
the most important
the
one
most
of all.
important one of all. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, he came in just for the greatest segment.
It's just to bully me during Dear
Just a
Diary.
bully. We can't do Dear Diary without Fred. So
Put her on blast.
without further ado, Alexis will dive into her youth childhood hockey journal to share with us in Dear Diary with Alexis.
Wild versus Avalanche, November 28th, 2009. The Wild scored a goal, and in the third, they were down by 1. Nolan threw it in front of the net, and it went off Ebbett's glove, off Foot's foot, and into the net. The refs originally called it a goal. Then they reviewed it, and, well, you know the rest.
And that's Dear Diary with Alexis.
I just want to say, Adam Foote, what a throwback. I hated
Adam
that guy.
Foote.
I hated Adam Foote. Like, there's a lot of Adam Foote slander in these journals. Like, I'm not going to lie.
That makes sense. No, I get
Yeah.
that. I think that most people would agree with you. It's funny. The first thing, because I just had this conversation with my husband and our friends, it was a hockey trivia. So we will conclude with this. And it's the easiest hockey trivia. And if you don't get it, Fred, I'm looking at you. You better get this one.
Nope.
Who scored the overtime Stanley Cup winning goal back in 1999? But there's a big controversy because was his foot in the crease?
Oh, yeah. See, I was 4 years old at this time, but
But
this
everybody
was,
knows it because his foot
yeah.
100% was in the crease. And so that's what made me think of it, though, is because you said foot. And I was like, like a foot in the crease. That's classic.
yeah,
Do you know who it
off
was,
of
Fred?
Foot's foot.
No, I'm a Blues fan.
Well, it wasn't the Blues, I'll tell you that.
It
much.
wasn't.
No,
the
I know.
Blues.
So it
But I
wasn't the Blues on
believe
TV. I wasn't watching.
You would
This is
know
like-
his
this is
name.
like back when, like, you didn't watch everything.
Yeah,
Um,
1999, the good old days.
I believe he played for the Blues at one point in time. In fact, I believe he's in the Blues Hall of Fame.
That's not
Important information.
Yes. No, I'm 100%. He was drunk at the Blues Stanley Cup last year.
Joseph.
His name's Brett Hull.
Brett Hull.
Brett Hall.
His name's Brett Hull. He was very
drunk at the Blues
intoxicated
parade.
at the Blues parade last
He
year.
was very
Always
drunk, yes.
intoxicated.
UMD guy. Let's get him on the pod. He's coming. And we'll ask him. I think he would agree that his foot was in the crease. And that
Yeah,
goal
he
should have
can
counted.
say it now, though. That's, we're 20 years removed from that. He's safe from any hate at this point, right?
I mean,
No.
no. I mean, not if
He's
you're on
Never
the opposing
forget.
team. All right, kids. Well, that'll wrap it up for another episode of Bardown Beauties. We appreciate you tuning in, as always. Subscribe, rate, follow us on our social channels. We're going to get some exciting new things in the works on our social channels. I know we tell you that all the time, and we always follow through, but we're just always trying new things. So if you have ideas of topics we should cover, things you want to
Still
see
no
on our
foot pics.
social. Out of nowhere.
She's dead.
I'm dead. I'm okay. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. Join us next week. Have a good one.